Morning, everyone. I've been thinking recently about how we have God stories in our lives that are visible to others. Some that are hidden, maybe, and are personal to us that um, remind us of who God is and His faithfulness towards us and hold us true to our faith and our belief in His goodness, and others that are more public. In reading John's Gospel, at the end of John's Gospel, John writes that these things have been recorded in order that we might believe in Jesus as the Son of God, and through doing so may have life and life to the full. There are many things that Jesus did, recorded miracles that weren't recorded in Scripture, certainly not in John's Gospel, that he did. But John writes that he only recorded these things that we might believe fully. Later in John's Gospel, it says that actually, if all of the things that Jesus had done were recorded and written down, it would fill all the books in all the world. There wouldn't be enough space to record everything he's done. And I'm sure you have stories in your own life of things that God has done for you, the way that He has reached into your life, rescued us, brought us through to salvation and to being part of God's family, how He's provided, how He has turned up when we've most needed Him. And I want to encourage us today to reflect on some of those things, to begin to draw strength from those times where we've seen Him at work in our lives, to build ourselves up in Him and remind ourselves of who He is and how much He loves us, how faithful He is to us, how good He is no matter what the circumstance around us. And that as we do that, to be prepared for those God stories to be seen by the world around, that they might too believe. In the Old Testament, we saw where God worked wonders in the life of Israel, that the community built pillars of stone as memorials so that when people passed them by, they would say, "What's this here for? What's it commemorating?" And people were able to share the stories of God, of His wonderful acts on their behalf, of the victories that they saw. Because it wasn't just at times where God had acted for them, but also the times where they'd stepped out in faith and God had worked in and through them to bring great victory. And then there are the times where, like in the crossing of the Jordan, where memorial stones were piled up in the middle of the riverbed and the river came back over and covered it. A hidden memorial that you couldn't just see by passing by, but was there for all who knew that it was there. It was a reminder of what God had done. In our lives, there are hidden stories that remind us of who God is and how much He loves us. And then there are the more public stories of the things He does in and through us, whether that's stepping out and taking little steps of faith and seeing God meet us. That could be in an act of kindness. It could be in responding to a need, starting a project, meeting that person we know to be lonely, having coffee with someone who is grieving or in need. It could be picking up the paper for an elderly neighbour. It could be doing a food shop for someone we know that is shielding or isolating. And in those moments, as we take those little steps, God is able to meet us and create a God story that draws people to Him. And I want to pray today that those God stories in our lives will draw us to greater faith and greater acts of courage as we step out in boldness to follow His leading, but also those God stories that people will see. That even though they may be not everything, and even though they may be small little snippets, that they may, as John writes in his Gospel, be enough to cause us to believe and cause others to believe that Jesus is the Son of God, and then to have life, and life in all its fullness. So may your little acts of faith today bring you closer to God. May they remind you of His great love for you, but may they also draw others to Him. Be blessed today. Have a great day.